Okay, it's a tough issue, abortion. It's very controversial. It can get emotional when people talk about it. It's divisive. Some say it's very complicated. Now, right now, the Supreme Court today, they heard arguments about a new law in Mississippi that would ban abortions after 15 weeks. That's almost 4 months. This, for me, is not very complicated, actually, because this is a fetus at 15 weeks. And this is life. In my book, I know people do disagree with me, but at 15 weeks, this baby has a heartbeat. This baby can open and close its hands. This baby has developing lungs, and this baby can feel pain. That's where I am on the issue. Of course, this is a big country, and there are a lot of voices. It's clear-cut for me, but not for everybody on the Supreme Court. This was Justice Sonia Sotomayor today.
Virtually every state defines a brain death as death. Yet the literature is filled with episodes of people who are completely and utterly brain dead, responding to stimuli. There's about 40% of dead people who, if you touch their feet, the foot will recoil. There are spontaneous acts by dead brain people. So I don't think that a response to by a fetus necessarily proves that there's a sensation of pain or that there's consciousness. So I go back to my question of what has changed in science to show that the viability line is not a real line. How is your interest anything but a religious view? The issue of when life begins has been hotly debated by philosophers since the beginning of time. It's still debated in religions. So when you say this is the only right that takes away from the state the ability to protect a life, that's a religious view, isn't it? Because it assumes that a fetus is life at when? You're not drawing your, when do you suggest we begin that life?
All right. She says it's been hotly debated, and there's a chance that it's not a life, or it can feel pain, or maybe not feel pain. If there's a chance, if there's even a 1% chance, I wouldn't take it. Would you? Would she really? Has she really thought about this in those terms? She used the word fetus a couple of times. Interesting. Fetus, actually, comes from Latin, and it means offspring, bringing forth, hatching of young. Interesting. The very word connotes life. I find that interesting. Now, listen, I listened to some of the arguments today. They get very complicated very, very quickly. Justice Kavanaugh, the way he was speaking, it seemed to a lot of folks that he was prepared to throw out Roe v. Wade. And that would excite a lot of people. And, of course, it generated a great deal of controversy on the left. No decision today. We won't have that decision for a long time, but some of the reactions so far.
I think the consequences of this, when you think about a state-by-state decision on whether or not a state can control essentially family planning in a woman's womb, I mean, that is sort of the slippery slope that you enter.
Nobody should look at this as anything other than a very, very strategic legal strategy and political strategy that has been in the works for decades. This is the long game exemplified, because conservatives have been pushing to pack the courts on the lower levels and, of course, ultimately the Supreme Court.
This court has never taken rights away from people, fundamental rights, unless there's a glaring reason to do so. And that's what the court is on the verge of doing here.
That risk calculation is going to fundamentally be denied women of color and low-income women of all races. And women with resources will find a way, will get on a plane, will go wherever they need to go. And that is another level of simply violating fundamental rights, in particular of women of color.
Of course, the race card. Of course, we'll throw in the race card to even further complicate this issue, which, as I said, for me, is not so complicated. All right, and at times like this, maybe some presidential leadership, fat chance.
I support Roe v. Wade. I think it's a rational position to take, and I continue to support it.
That's it. That's it. For these kinds of issues, Roe v. Wade, I support women's right to choose, and then he moves on. And then he starts talking about how well he knows the Pope. Hey, remember when he embarrassed himself, and everybody over here, really, when he talked so much about baseball and himself, when he met with the Pope? He hasn't learned anything about these matters from the Pope or anyone else. He just goes around bragging about who he knows. He could be helping people right now if he believed, but I don't think he does.
He said, Holy Father, and the Pope reached out like this and he grabbed my hand. He said, I know, Mr. Vice President, you're always welcome here. That is the message he sent into the world. Turned to introduce me to the Holy Father. And before he could, the Holy Father put out his hand and said, Mr. Vice President, you are always welcome here. You are always welcome here. Think about him. Pope Francis has become I don't want to exaggerate it. He's become someone who's provided great solace for my family when my son died. When I won, he called me to tell me how much he appreciated the fact that I would focus on the poor and focus on the needs of people who are in trouble.
Okay, a couple of things here. Mr. Vice President, you are welcome anytime. Mr. Vice President, you see how it's just about the prestige, the status. I know the Pope, I can stay at his house anytime, and he goes around repeating that. Let's see, he got a call the night he won. And he said, oh, I support you because of all your work you do for the poor and the needy. Is that Joe's brand? No, it's not Joe's brand. It's not what he does. We found a little clip back when Joe was a senator hanging out with his son Hunter, his wingman.
Well, maybe we can work something out, man.
That's what we'll do.
Well, Hunter was just telling about his firm in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Law firm?
Yeah.
Do you have a card by any chance?
I do. I don't, but I'll give you my...
well, let me give you my card.
And then I'll get in contact. I gave them all away.
Okay.
Well, that was a wonderful speech.
Thank you.
That was Bo who wrote that.
You're the core of what I wrote there and your dad, Bo.
You see how that worked? You see how that worked? Hunter goes with the other guy and they talk business. Well, Joe continues to glad hand. That encapsulates, captures so much, and so does this book by Miranda Devine that I think we all have a duty to read. It is called Laptop from Hell, Hunter Biden, Big Tech, and the Dirty Secrets the President Tried to Hide. Now, we have a duty to read this book. Why? Because Big Tech censored this story back during the campaign, and the Bidens, they certainly don't want us reading about this stuff now. Some of it is very sad. Some of it's juicy. They don't want us being reminded about this. Hunter Biden has a child. Had a child out of wedlock. DNA test shows Hunter Biden fathered child with Arkansas woman. Inside the book, it goes like this. The woman's name, London Alexis Roberts, 28, launched a paternity case the following year. After a DNA sample proved he was the father of the girl, known to the court as NJR, Hunter was ordered to pay child support. It goes on, but he never acknowledged his child. Hunter Biden is the father of 3 daughters and a son. He will write on the jacket flap of his 2021 memoir, erasing the 4th of his 5 children. He claimed of Roberts, I had no recollection of the encounter. Well, that's not true. According to the laptop, he was texting with the girl for months, and they were seeing each other rather consistently. So he has a child out of wedlock that he does not acknowledge, and that means Joe Biden has a granddaughter that he doesn't acknowledge. he has 7 grandkids. He only says 6.
How many of you have been unable to hug your grandkids in the last 7 months? I got 6 of them. 2 of them, my deceased sons, boys, they live not, children, a boy and a girl, live not far from me. They can walk through the woods. The only way I can see them, I stand on the back porch, and they stand down, and I bribe them with Haagen-Dazs bars. But every single day I contact them. But I can't hug them. I can't embrace them.
Well, there's some granddaughter of his in Arkansas who would like a Haagen-Dazs bar as well. All right? You know, it's so weird that they say that the Biden family, they're all about empathy, and the Trump family, they're the worst people in the world. I actually know a number of the Trumps, and I think it's the opposite. I think they're fantastic. I think they're good people. Yet the mainstream media, they always tell us that, no, they're the bad people, and the Bidens, these are the people who will restore honor and decency. Forgive me, but there's so much corruption, addiction, borderline incestuous sex inside that family. There is. Joe Biden made an interesting point during the debate. At first, I thought, oh, he's lying. But actually, in a weird way, he might be telling the truth.
You know who I am. You know who he is. You know his character. You know my character. You know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
So we've taken a good, hard look at both of these guys, especially you, Joe Biden, lately, and we're not impressed. I think we all should, any reasonable person should have grave concerns about your character. Now, listen, I am no saint, I am no angel, and I am not a Bible thumper, but I do remember something from the Bible where suddenly good is bad and bad is evil. They warn about this in Isaiah. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who turn darkness to light and light to darkness, who replace bitter with sweet and sweet with bitter. Sounds a lot like the mainstream media, quite frankly, and a good chunk of Democrats, but who knows? We'll be right back.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.